Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. We have a full episode today. It's not going to be a typical game recap right after the game. I'm going to save that for Wednesday, actually. But for today's episode, we're going to preview the massive matchup against the Florida Panthers. The Penguins have not seen them in quite a few months. They split the first 2 innings. We're going to get to that coming up in the first or second segment. We're also going to get to Brian Burke's comments to Josh Yohe and some of the other media and why it may potentially be a lighter trade deadline for the Penguins compared to recent years. And I will touch on Teddy Blueger's return as it looks like he will finally be making his return on Tuesday, and get to some other injury updates as well, and also go around the league a little bit. That's all coming up on this episode of Locked On Penguins right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter, LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Just visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. So back in my normal setup, I apologize for Friday. Went up with my girlfriend to Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, a couple hours from Pittsburgh, but that is definitely a place that, just a weird part of the state for those listeners that are in Pennsylvania. Only about a 3-hour drive from where I'm at now, but just a very interesting place, to say the least. When my girlfriend and her friends went skiing. But anyways, the Pittsburgh Penguins are back in action on Tuesday, finally. But it is good that they are getting some rest. They're going to badly need it, I think, down the stretch with all these tough games. The schedule does not let up. Florida on Tuesday. They have Carolina on the weekend, and then smack in between, the Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Eichel will come to town, as he will be playing, but they will not have Mark Stone. I'm going to get to that a little later in the week. But first off, let's go into the team the Penguins are playing tonight, and that is the Florida Panthers. So remember, the Penguins played the Panthers twice already. This was back when both Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin did not play. If I'm not mistaken, I do not think either of them played. I know obviously Evgeny Malkin did not play. I'm going to double check this just real quick for you all. But remember, the Penguins, they won the first matchup, but they lost the second one. And it also, I should say, that was a matchup that the Penguins easily could have won. They were up 4-2 in the third period down in Sunrise with about 10 minutes left. Panthers able to make it 4-3, 4-4 a couple minutes later, and then they were able to win it in overtime. So the Penguins have gotten 3 out of 4 possible points against Florida this year, making sure. So yeah, the Penguins on November 11th, so right before, of course, my 24th birthday, they beat the Panthers in a shootout. The Panthers were 10-2 at the time. The Penguins were 5-3-4. Evan Rodriguez and Teddy Blueger scored in regulation. Tristan Jarry had a .947 save percentage for that game. He was just absolutely on one for the Penguins. And I'm looking to see here, when was the other game that these two teams played? Because I'm pretty positive it was – I'm pretty sure it was directly after this. But again, I know it was a 5-4 game in Florida. The Penguins, again, I thought they played pretty well in that game. It was just, they had a couple of bad defensive breakdowns that really screwed them up. There was also that Aaron Ekblad goal that, he kind of circled around the net. There was all that pandemonium in front, remember? And then he shot it in. Everyone thought it was going to be goaltender interference, but I think the ref lost sight of the puck. And, for as much as the Penguins wanted interference, they wanted the play to be dead. There's not much, they can do when, the ref, I guess maybe he saw it, but, the whistle probably should have been blown, in my opinion. And of course, again, the Panthers won that second game in overtime. So the Penguins, again, they've played Florida good, but Florida has also been just as good, if not better, since then. Looking at the underlying numbers, 56% of the expected goals this year at 5v5 per money puck, 59% of the actual goals. They have a 56% of the shot attempts at even strength. That's one of the best marks in the league. They have a plus 46 goal differential. And I also will say this, they've gotten some pretty damn good goaltending this year. 919 cumulative save percentage, goals for per 60, 3.4, goals against per 60, 2.36. That is just a massive difference there. So not only do they score a lot, but they also can defend pretty well too. Looking at the goaltending leaders as well for goals saved above expected. Sergei Bobrovsky right now, 4th in the league, 21 goals saved above expected this year. It's crazy that he's been able to do this because, the last few years, he's not been good. He's honestly been one of the worst goaltenders in hockey. He's had a save percentage that's hovered, kind of around 900, if not a little over, but those are still below average numbers. It was looking like, wow, the Panthers were never going to get out of this awful contract. But this season, he's been back and then some. He's, I think, established himself as definitely a big Vezina candidate. 917 overall save percentage, 2.54 goals against average. Save percentage on unblocked shots, 950. Just having a really good year compared to Tristan Jarry. Of course, he's been great too. He has saved 13.7 goals saved above expected and has a 921 save percentage. I am going to go to left wing lock here just to look at the lines, but I don't even have to do that a little bit because I know that Jonathan Huberdeau has been ridiculous this season. I think he is a very sneaky Hart Trophy candidate. He's well over a point per game. He has always been one of the more underrated players in the NHL. I think he doesn't get a lot of notice at times from some of the national media or even some fans because, he plays in Florida. Sunrise is not really, I shouldn't even say that. It's just the Panthers franchise. They haven't really done much, the last 15, 20 years, honestly, since 1996, to be honest with you all. But, they've still had a good core in place for the last several years. They just haven't been able to get over the hump and build around them consistently. Now that they have, and they have a good general manager in place with a good coach that replaced Joel Quenneville, this is a team that can do a lot of damage in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Remember last year, they went up against Tampa Bay. Everyone was all excited for the Battle of Florida, myself included. But the biggest thing that they didn't have that they needed was Aaron Ekblad. Remember, he was out with that, I believe it was a broken ankle, if I'm not mistaken, and the Panthers lost that series in 6. If Ekblad is fully healthy, who knows what happens? Now that he is right now, again, knock on wood, they can definitely, I think, take down Tampa in a 7-game series. I think, honestly, right now, they would probably be my favorite to come out of the Atlantic. But, with how Boston's rolling, I know Toronto they're not as good right now, but they still have a lot of dangerous weapons. No series is going to be tough for that team, or heck, even any team in the Eastern Conference. But, he's just been incredible this year. Obviously, Sasha Barkov needs no introduction. Connor Verhaeghe's on the top line. He's been good. Sam Bennett has just had a total, 180 from where he was in Calgary. Anthony Duclair has been a great find. Sam Reinhart has been awesome since coming over from Buffalo. Frank Vetrano, Noah Chari, obviously old friend Patrick Hornquist will be making another return to Pittsburgh. He's also been pretty decent this year as well. And again, defensively, Mackenzie Weegar and Aaron Ekblad probably form arguably the best top defensive pairing in the league. Obviously Ekblad is well known for his offense, but defensively, he's still pretty strong too. Weegar is good offensively, but he's elite. And I mean elite defensively. The numbers also back those claims up. So the Penguins are going to have to try to somehow get offense going against that top pairing. Ratko Gudas on the second pairing, Brandon Montour on the third pairing. Sergei Bobrovsky will likely start this game. The Panthers just played on Monday night. They steamrolled the Buffalo Sabres 6-1. Spencer Knight started in that one. So again, they're not going to start him 2 games in a row. I know I've been wrong about some things this season. I don't think I will be wrong about this, to say the least. But, the Penguins, they got to play like how they've been playing these last couple of games if they want to win this game. I know Carolina, their level of play dipped a little bit, but I also argue that they were on a back-to-back. Tampa Bay, they played really well. That's obviously the blueprint for how the Penguins should play always. But if they even come, just a level below that, I think the Penguins can definitely take down Florida. They've already done it once this season. They've almost done it twice. I'm really excited to see how these two teams match up again because they haven't played each other in several months now. But it's just another tough game on the schedule. Obviously, the Panthers have a good power play. Their PK is usually always good. They're deep. They're fast. They forecheck really hard. Defensively, they're really stingy. Goaltending with Sergei Bobrovsky, he's been good. I know the Penguins have owned him in recent years, but he's still having probably one of the best seasons I've ever had. So I will be curious to see how the Penguins come out in this one. It is weird because they seem to struggle more at home this year compared to on the road. I don't really understand that. This is usually one of the best home teams in the league, but 3 massive home games coming up. It starts against Florida. I'm really excited to see how the Penguins come out, to say the least. But coming up in the next segment, we're going to go into some practice notes from Monday, looking to see what the lineup is going to look like. And of course, touch on Teddy Blueger's, very highly likely impending return. Before I get to that, though, football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to your Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or to use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action that is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @LO_Penguins. So Teddy Blueger was officially back. He's been officially back at practice, but he was, again, practicing full contact today. But this was the first time that we saw him back in his normal spot for line rushes. He was centering Zach Aston-Reese and Brock McGinn on the fourth line. Brian Boyle was one of the extras during line rushes. So it looks like he is going to come out of the lineup, and Dominic Simone will stay in for now until Jason Zucker is going to be ready. More on him, in a little bit. But to have the fourth line back is going to be, I think, a problem for a lot of teams moving forward. This is a line that Mike Sullivan loves to throw out to the Wolves. Whether it's, I've seen him throw them out against the Marchand, Bergeron, and Pastrnak line. I've seen him do it against Colorado's top line with McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen. Sully does not care. He sees them as, not only his checking line, but a line that can also, forecheck pretty well against those lines and actually have a little bit of sustained pressure. Again, I know that underlying metrics for defensively have been really good this year, but, offensively too, this is a line that I don't think gets, enough credit, I guess, on a league-wide basis. So to see all 3 of them back playing together, that's going to be huge for Pittsburgh. And I hopefully this is really going to start to get Zach Aston-Reese going. And I know I haven't talked a lot about Aston-Reese this year, but the fact of the matter is, people, he needs to start producing more if he wants to come back next year. I have seen people say that they would put him in deadline deals and stuff like that. I personally wouldn't, because I know how good he is defensively. But, at this point, he's playing for his next contract. And if he's not going to start producing offense like he did last year, and I believe, he was a double-digit goal scorer last year. This year, he's not even up to 5, and we have 25 games left, believe it or not. I mean, it's crazy how we basically have 6 to 7 weeks left in the season at this point. But, again, at the end of the day, the Penguins, for as great as the top players have been, and for as great as some of the depth signings have been, Dan Heinen and Rodriguez at times, Aston-Reese has not been good in the offensive zone, and that needs to change. He's gotten his chances. He's getting good looks. Maybe the puck's just not going in the net. But I also think, he could do more at times in the offensive zone to actually give him the best chance to score. So I'm really hoping that maybe Blueger can start to get some offense out of Aston Reese. But obviously the penalty kill is going to improve right away with Teddy coming back. That it's just so massive. I mean, I know the PK in the last few games, it's been pretty decent, but before then it had a little bit of a dry spell where the PK percentage just it cratered a little bit. Obviously it's still top 3 in the league, but when Blueger went out, it was number 1, and that's for a reason. He's that good on the PK with pressuring the players in the offensive zone and just playing his spot really well. But when he goes out and he's replaced by someone who's not as good, you're going to see the numbers dip. And they did a little bit, obviously not as much as as hopefully maybe people thought it would, but it's still I think a considerable notice to me. And I'm really excited for him to be back. Of course, the Penguins, they're that much closer to being fully healthy with the forward group. The only one that's missing now is Jason Zucker. Speaking of him, he has been back on the ice for the last couple of days now. He's officially started to skate for the first time since his sports hernia surgery. So the fact that he is cleared to skate is pretty big news for the Penguins. Remember, last week Mike Sullivan said to Josh Getzoff on the Penguins GM/head coach show that Zucker was not far behind Blueger. So I don't know if that means he's going to be playing by the deadline, but I still think this is a player that the team badly misses. Again, I've said that probably quite a few times these last few episodes. I know that he drives a lot of people crazy because he hasn't produced as much as we thought he would, but he is still one of their best forward checkers. He's a good playmaker. He plays his tail off. And, he actually goes to the net and gets quality chances. I think the main thing with him is that he's been unlucky and the puck hasn't been going in the net for him. So to see him back on the ice, it's great news. I'm sure he's going to be just doing these little solo sessions for maybe about another week and a half until he starts to rejoin the team for practice. Mike Matheson, who is considered week to week, he is also on the ice skating with Jason Zucker. So both of the remaining Penguin players that are injured are officially back on the ice. So we're going to cross our fingers that hopefully, some way, somehow, Penguins will be fully healthy for the first time this season. In a couple of weeks, we'll have to see. But obviously that is big news. The other lines, they remained intact. Gensel, Crosby, Rust, Heinen, Malkin, Kapanen, and then with Simone with Carter Rodriguez defensively. The pairs were the same. And then Tristan Jarry, I'm sure, will start against Florida on Tuesday night. But that'll do it for this segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up in the last segment, we're going to get into Brian Burke's comments to Josh Yohe and why I think, what he said, could very well actually be the case for the Penguins trade deadline stuff. But before I get to that, you can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why should you choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain dealer or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you can need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. You can go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car, truck, and write Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they knew we sent you. That is amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @L_Penguins. So today, as I teased, so Josh Yohe got to sit down with Brian Burke and talk about, a whole bunch of things. One of the first things he discussed was Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. Brian Burke basically said about that, we would love to keep all three for the rest of their careers. They're not really freaking out that they haven't had big discussions with the agents yet, even though they have. He said, these guys don't need to be re-signed yet. The passage of time, people who aren't in the industry, they look at the calendar and they start to panic. But at the end of the day, we still have a lot of time. The season has at least a few more months left. And, he's right. So, we'll have to see as the season goes on, I guess, as we get towards, late April and early May, if some more talks start to pick up. Now, the biggest thing that he discussed was the trade deadline. And Josh Yohe said, just how different the Penguins will look by the March 21st deadline remains to be seen. And Brian Burke says, we're capped out. We would have to be sending some cash out or bring some cash in to make a move. I just do not know if I see us doing much, but it's up to Ron Hextall. It all could change. Okay. So for everyone that has been listening to this show for the last week or two, you all know I've been, beating the drum that the team needs another top 6, top 9 winger. I've thrown out some names out there, maybe what a package could look like. But, Berkey does make a point, with how little assets the Penguins do have. It's mainly their first round pick, Sam Poulin, Nathan Legare, Philip Hollander, if they want to deal him again. P.O. Joseph, if they want to deal him, but I'm not really sure if they do. Kasperi Kapanen, and honestly, there's probably not much else to pick out of the cupboard over here. With that said, Berkey also nails it that they don't have a lot of cap space. So again, they will have to go out and send some salary out to bring salary in. But with how many great players are available and the packages that it would take to get those said players, I don't know if it would make sense, if it does make sense for the Penguins to, trade, those assets that I mentioned, or even someone, that much bigger to go get a player that, eats up term for the next several years that, they could go out and, I guess, give that to Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. So I kind of see both sides to it in a way. Yes, I still think they could use another top 9 forward. When healthy, this is a very deep team, but if you can maybe exchange, someone like Kasperi Kapanen for another forward in there who can score on Evgeny Malkin's line, you would do it. But I think at the end of the day as well, I don't think the Penguins are just going to, dump a bunch of assets for the sake of dumping a bunch of assets. It's great to be all in. And, I know I'm all in with this team. I'm sure Ron Hextall and Brian Burke are all in with the team, but I'm just not sure if they want to, go for a home run here when, maybe all they need is, something a little smaller. Again, this stuff can, and potentially will change. There's only 13 days to go until the NHL trade deadline. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of trade talk starting to pick up pretty soon. Usually between now is the start when trades, I guess, come to fruition a little bit. So it has been abnormally quiet, with the Penguins. I know they were scouting Vancouver a little bit these last couple of days, which is great. But I just wanted to prepare everyone in case the Penguins don't do something major. It's not the end of the world, because I do think this team is ridiculously deep. Again, I'll say this for probably the third or fourth time. If there is an actual upgrade out there that makes a lot of sense for the Penguins and they don't have to, I guess, give up a massively prime asset from the team right now, I think they do it. I don't really care about the first round pick. I don't care about Sam Poulin and a couple of these other, players that I mentioned. But if it's a player that's playing well and maybe they're top 9, or, a player that's playing well defensively, I would maybe think twice a little bit before they do it. So, maybe Brian Burke is bluffing a little bit. He very well could be. I know I tweeted that earlier in the day. But the fact of the matter is as well, he's not really going to say that much. This is not Jim Rutherford over here, who is actually going to tell you what he is going to do at the deadline. Burke is not going to go out and say, oh yeah, we'd like to upgrade at this spot. Well, we're okay at this spot. Maybe, but if something comes along, we'll look at it. That's not how he and Hextall operate. They're very careful, calculated on how they talk to the media about deadline plans and stuff regarding the team. It's just a very, I think, tight inner circle when it comes to the day-to-day operations with the team. So I'm not sure if they will do anything at deadline. Again, I hope they do. But if they don't, I'm not going to be super, super upset, because I really like how the team is gelling right now. And I know that this team can definitely go on a run in the playoffs. But that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll be back on Wednesday with a full game recap episode of the game against Florida before we start to preview the road ahead for the Penguins as they have Vegas coming in and then Carolina this weekend. So thank you all so much for listening, and I'll be back with you all on Wednesday.